It's been great to see all the research that's presented here. I think it's so important that we're not just taking data off the shelf on a company's performance, but we're coming up with novel data, novel approaches, asking the real questions about how climate affects corporate value and the impacts it has, and questioning whether we're looking at it the right way, as Brian did. One of the challenges we face when we look at the impact that firms are having is firms often deceive us. Firms often say one thing and do another. And that's something that I look at in this paper with some of my co-authors, including a former doctoral student here who's now at Rutgers, a visiting professor here, and a colleague at UT Austin. We're looking at whether firms who say they care about environment actually follow through. And that's really hard because we can't always observe what they do. And so we're going to ask whether a company like Verizon here, who says they want to move forward sustainably and puts out this really glossy and nice ESG report that makes all these claims, says that they are really concerned about this, do they actually follow up? And we're going to do that by looking at the way that they lobby, the way that they influence the policy environment, which is actually really hard to do because firms often don't have to disclose or divulge to the public how they lobby and the direction in which they lobby. Now, Verizon, who has all these wonderful claims in their sustainability reports, actually lobbied on HB 1355 concerning the creation of producer responsibility program for statewide recycling, and they lobbied to support this bill in the state of Colorado, somewhat consistent with their policies. Now, it would be nice if that was the norm. Unfortunately, it's not. And we're going to show that through a systematic large data analysis, pulling together data that other people haven't had. So the way we're going to do this is in 5 states, including Colorado, every corporation that lobbies a public entity, a regulator, a legislator, has to not only disclose that they lobbied, but they also have to disclose the bill they lobbied on and the direction of change that they wanted. Did they support it or did they oppose it? And all that is available through state disclosure of various degrees of transparency and ease of scraping. So we figure out whether they support or they oppose different bills. Our data set comprises 388,000 declarations across 33,890 bills over 6 years that we match to over 5,000 firms that were part of the S&P 1500 or Russell 3000 over a 10-year period. Over 500 firms lobbied in at least one of these states across over 7,500 bills. And we want to see whether their declarations and their sustainability reports line up with the way they lobbied. The way we capture the claims is developing a vocabulary building on prior research, mining or analyzing their annual reports and their sustainability reports for these kinds of words that connote attention to the climate. Air quality, alternative fuel. I'll spare you reading every word on the list, but you get the gist, that we're looking at how much they talk about these issues in their sustainability reports, and then we see on what they lobby. Now, in order to do the lobbying, we have to code each of those thousands of bills as to whether they're pro-environment or anti-environment. So the way we do that is we first look at whether they're talking about certain words like climate, energy, the same kind of analysis. And then we look to see we look to code each of these based on whether they're in favor or against those, again using text analysis. And then importantly, coding whether a firm opposes or supports a bill that is pro or anti-energy, anti-climate regulation, and coming up with a measure of consistency between their environmental lobbying and their environmental claims. Now the punchline, I could show you a lot of regressions and a lot of fancy statistics. But the punchline of our analysis is that for the hundreds of firms in our sample, there's absolutely no correlation between the text content of their sustainability reports and the way they're lobbying at the state level. No correlation. Okay? So you can't believe what they say. But there's a little bit of good news. The ESG initiative sponsors the Zicklin Index for Corporate Political Accountability. It's a way of rating firms on the degree of disclosure of their corporate political activity and also their governance of their lobbying activity. For the firms that have the highest standards of disclosure of their corporate political activity and have a common board-level oversight for sustainability and lobbying, the correlation is positive, significant, and robust. So the implication here is we should be demanding that firms disclose how they lobby, according to the Zicklin Center of Corporate Transparency and Political Accountability, And we should be demanding better corporate governance of these firms so that they're not saying one thing on one hand and doing something on the other. In subsequent research, we show this isn't just a moral or an ethical point. The firms that lack the correlation between what they say and what they do are more likely to be sued, more likely to be called in for a regulatory hearing or a regulatory investigation. So there's a material cost to the inconsistency. So let's hold them accountable, let's demand transparency, and let's increase those costs for inconsistency. As a final word, if I have 30 seconds, I also teach 2 courses this spring. At the undergraduate level, it's Management 2090, the political and social environment of the multinational firm. At the MBA level, it's Management 7200, corporate diplomacy. It allows you to understand how firms engage with their stakeholders, derive value from that, engage in strategic communications, and drive change within their organizations to align societal and shareholder value. And I see a couple of former alum of the class in the room, so it's great to have you back and see your interest here. Thanks very much.